Don't do old Bone Grinder at level 3! Curse of Strahd is rated as one of the best pre-written adventures for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition by a whole heck of a lot of people, and there's a reason for that. It has almost everything that Dungeons & Dragons is known for and is good at. It has an awesome setting. It has a very interesting story. It has all plethora of different types of monsters and encounters and characters. Curse of Strahd has something for everyone, but that does not mean that it is good for everyone. Being that it centers heavily around vampires, and this vampire, there are going to be a lot of vampire-esque things throughout this entire campaign. Very gothic horror and medieval renaissance feelings, stuff like that. But does that mean the whole campaign is centered around that way? No, not at all. And if you're an expert DM or if you have an expert DM, they can definitely flavor things up differently to fit the needs of you as players. Now, unlike most pre-written campaigns, this adventure doesn't have one big storyline that your characters are supposed to follow. The storyline basically can be summed up to: you're trapped in Barovia, there's only one way to get out of Barovia, and you need to go defeat him. Okay, but how do we do that? Well, you level up. Well, how do we level up? You do a plethora of different side quests within the Valley of Barovia, and while you complete all these different things, you slowly level up, and then once you feel you're strong enough, there he is, over in his castle. Go knock on his door and say, "Hey, big boy, we're gonna fight you today." Jokes aside, that is really how the campaign is run. It is a giant open sandbox of a valley that your characters can go around, adventure in, check out new places, talk to new people, and slowly level up, just doing various different things. And then, when your party feels they're strong enough, probably around level 9 or 10, then they can go and fight Strahd in his big-ass castle. So unlike my last two pre-written adventures where we were going to go chapter by chapter as the storyline goes through, since every chapter is really just a different location in Barovia, we're going to talk about a few of the main locations that I want to let you guys in on a few details about, and maybe alter them slightly. But before we get into any of that, let's talk about the most important thing about this adventure: Strahd. To run this adventure the way it should be done, or the way that players expect it to be done, you need to know, as a dungeon master, Strahd von Zarovich in and out. I highly recommend you spend a majority of your time prepping for this adventure, getting into the mindset of Strahd. Strahd is not your typical big bad evil villain that you have to fight at the end of the adventure. That is what he is, but he shows up periodically numerous times throughout this entire adventure, taunting with your players, making sure that they feel like they can't achieve anything, like they are stuck in this valley, his valley, for all eternity, just like he is. He is manipulative, he is scummy, he is intelligent, and he is cunning. Strahd will toy with his food endlessly until it is so ripe with fear, and only then, when it's at its utmost ripest, that's when the juice is most savory, and that is when he will take his bite, both literally and metaphorically. This is definitely going beyond extra mile, but there is an excellent audiobook called Strahd Memoirs of a Vampire that you can find on Audible that I'd highly recommend giving a listen to if you really want to dive into the idea of Strahd and what he's like. I'm not sponsored, I just think it's an incredible book. But once you've got Strahd packed down in your head and how you want to play him and how his mannerisms are like, then once you get into the campaign, I recommend you bring Strahd out here and there to really toy with the players. Do not bring him out every session or every 2 sessions, because the more and more that he shows up, the less and less impactful it will be. But maybe once every 4 or 5 sessions, and even that may be a bit much. But when he does show up, he has a plan. He is there for a specific reason, and he aims to execute it flawlessly. This man has lived for hundreds upon hundreds of years. He is not dumb. He is very intelligent. That's why he's also never alone. He either has some wolves or some bats, or maybe one of his plethora of wives. But now that you've got Strahd all figured out, let's go on to Barovia. The Valley of Barovia is rich in lore. Every single place that you go to is extensively well thought out and has very interesting characters, really cool locations, and all kinds of things to really sink your teeth in, both as a DM and as a player. There's not one location in Barovia that I can say is just downright bad or doesn't need to be there. I have locations that I like more than others, but I wouldn't say any one of the locations is just bad. The only location I could really say is bad per se is the Death House. The Death House House is the tutorial adventure for this campaign, where your characters will advance through a literal house of death and horrors and maze-like and cult and evil children and all kinds of horrible things, but it really doesn't pertain overall to the main story afterwards. I definitely think you can get away with doing out the Death House and just starting your characters at level 3 when they enter into Barovia. But if you really want a Death House because your players just love going through a dungeon crawl right at early, go ahead, make it fun, I believe in you. But once your players actually get into the adventure and get underway, one of the most early encounters they're gonna have is with a lovely old lady named Madame Eva. Madame Eva is essentially a fortune teller for a group of people collectively known as a Vistani, and she will use what are called tarot cards. These tarot cards are actual physical cards that you can purchase, and I highly recommend getting them. However, the book does tell you how to do this card reading with regular cards instead. The really cool thing about this card reading is that it will give the players certain goals and objectives that they can achieve to help them with their fight against Strahd later. Things like who their destined ally is, someone who will help them immensely during the fight with Strahd. 3 very important magic items that will definitely help you with your fight against Strahd. And the last card being where you can always find Strahd. For when your party is ready to fight him, they go off to his castle and they want to make war against him. Where in the castle can they always find him? And the really neat thing about this is that no matter how many times you play this adventure, your card reading will be different every single time for your group. So you could run this adventure with the same group again, but they will have different magic items, a different NPC, and a different location to fight Strahd every time based on this card reading. Now, of course, you can just make the card reading be what you want it to be, where you want the fight to happen, where you want the magic items to be, and who you want their ally to be, but it is way more fun just doing it at random, because then you don't know and your players don't know, and it's way more fun that way. But hey, you do you. Now, without boring you, having you watch an entire 40-minute video about this book going by page, I want to focus on a couple of key things for you. First things first, Old Bone Grinder is a windmill run by a coven of hags within the Valley of Barovia. The book recommends that your players can venture into this windmill at around level 3. Do not go into this windmill at level 3. 1 or 2 hags is fine. A group of very experienced players can definitely defeat them, no problem at level 3. 3 hags, however, becomes a coven, and the book distinctly tells you that all 3 of these hags have their coven abilities. These coven abilities are no fucking joke. I had a party of 6 players at level 4 or 5 when they ran into the Old Bone Grinder, and 3 of them died. So if the book thinks you can go into this encounter at level 3 with 4 people against 3 hags who are in a coven, the book is wrong. Do whatever you need to do to make the fight enjoyable and fun, but whatever you do, do not run the 3 hags with their coven abilities against 4 to 6 players at level 3. They will die. Trust me on this. They will die. But with Old Bone Grinder out of the way and figured out now, the next thing I want to talk about is Strahd's castle. This castle is huge! Just like I recommend sinking your teeth into Strahd von Zarovich and finding out all you can about him to really play him well, you need to spend a considerable amount of time going through this castle. This castle has rooms upon floors, upon layers, upon NPCs, upon encounters, upon rooms, upon... Your players can easily get stuck in this castle for days. Both IRL days and days in game. It is extensive. But the thing is, it's great. It's a fantastic castle. Every room has a purpose. Every hallway, every corridor, every floor has purpose for being there. The NPCs are interesting. There's a lot of people in here that directly tie into side quests you get outside of this castle. Your players will probably be coming to this castle numerous times throughout this adventure, not even just to fight Strahd. You need to really learn this castle when your players get into it, because they will explore it extensively. And it is very helpful when you know exactly where they're going and what's around the next corner, because if you don't, there's going to be a lot of stop and waiting while you read about the small little room and its paragraphs of information. Also, if you're able to get the book brand new, there's a nice map that comes at the very back with the whole land of Barovia on one side and then the entire castle laid out in all its extensiveness on the other side. You will be looking at this map numerous times. But circling back to Strahd for just a quick second here, while he is showing up and fighting the party a couple of times throughout the beginning of this adventure, you never want to play Strahd at full strength. That's for the final fight. I recommend when Strahd shows up early on in the player's adventures and toys with them a little bit, he maybe will do a small bit of damage here or there. He will toy with them and mess with them, just giving a taste of his powers. He doesn't outright just slap his dick on the table and show everything he can do right off the hop. He will slowly entice the players by showing little bits of his power bit by bit. And then once your players think, I know Strahd, I've got him figured out, that's when suddenly you introduce, oh, he's capable of magic. Oh, he's capable of transforming. Oh, he's capable of doing way more ridiculous shit. Strahd can even feign injuries, like he's being mortally wounded by all this damage they're doing, when the players really don't know that all that damage is actually going to a suspended heart in one of his towers, and he's not feeling a damn thing. Small little things like that can really make Strahd feel like an oppressive, enormous force to reconcile with. But overall, I think Curse of Strahd is an incredible adventure. I think it does require a little bit of work from the DM, not in terms of changing things really, except for old Bone Grinder, but really in just being prepared overall. A lot of pre-written adventures, you can get to know the first little bit of the adventure before getting started, and then you just have to go chapter by chapter as they progress throughout the book. This book is not written like that. Every chapter is a different location, and they will not go to those locations in order. So I fully recommend, as you probably should with every pre-written adventure, you read the whole thing through before you get started. However, I think that is more important than ever with this adventure. Also, there's that special edition of Curse of Strahd that came out a while ago. Don't bother with it. It's way more expensive than it needs to be, and the changes in the book are not that significant. Just pick up the regular, cheaper version. But what did you think of Curse of Strahd? Have you played in it before as a player? Have you run it as a DM? What experiences do you agree or disagree with me on? Or what any extra notes would you like to add? I'd love to hear all about it in the comment section down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, tell your friends. If you didn't, you tell me. Thank you very much to my Patreons. You guys are awesome. And thank you all so much for watching right up until the end. Have yourself a good one, everybody. Skål!